Welcome to the CSJ podcast. I'm your host, CS Joseph, and today for this episode we are going to be reading an Acolyte membership question, and I'll be answering the question. For those of you who are not aware, at csjoseph.life/portal, you can become a journeyman member, and then you can upgrade that to the Acolyte membership, which means I will do a video response to any one of your questions every month, basically. And some of those questions may make it to the YouTube channel or to everything else, and some of them may not. And if for some reason they don't, you get sent a private link. Just be advised that if you're asking a very private question, it may end up out in the public. But also, we don't reveal who's asking, so at least not for these types of questions. So hashtag disclaimer. That being said, let's get on to the question. Hey, I am an INTP, in my opinion, majoring in MIS. What type of tech careers would you say suits an INTP the most among others? That's a very interesting question, because oftentimes INTPs don't even know what they want to do, don't even know really anything to a point in terms of career, what to even do with themselves. And I think the reason why is because INTPs need to get to the point where they need to make themselves desirable as possible. And before I actually answer this question, I would like to share with you folks two resources that you can utilize right now. I'm going to double check to see if I actually have these in my Audible library, since my Audible library is, well, it's gigantic. It's big, so but trying to figure out the specific one. No, it looks like it's in the wish list, so we'll check the wish list for this. But there is a particular book. Here it is. Okay, so David Epstein wrote the book Range, okay? And the subtitle for it is Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World, okay? So a couple of years ago, I think this was back in 2015 or 2016, the tech giants got together for a summit. This would be like Amazon, Google, etc., Facebook even. And they had a bunch of people at the table, VMware, Microsoft, other groups were there as well. And they all just decided collectively that they weren't going to be doing generalists anymore. They wanted to hire specialists. And the reason why they wanted to hire specialists is because specialists are cheaper and they're easier to train. And not only that, specialists, when you hire specialists, they stay with you as a firm for a long term because they're not as appealing to other companies. It's a lot harder for them to do career changes. They're a lot easier to manage, etc. And in my opinion, this is just an opinion, they're easier to control and regiment their lives and suck out as much productivity as you can while at their complete and total expense. So quite honestly, in the long run, specialists turn into losers. If I'm going to be like quoting Johnny Lawrence from Cobra Kai, specialists in the long run are losers when compared to generalists. Generalists are the true masters, and a lot of people don't really know that or can even really accept that in a lot of ways, because a generalist is, as Jeet Kune Do creator Bruce Lee would say, they are like water. They can go in any direction. It doesn't matter if the one thing that they're focused on fails, they have other irons to fire. They have other options. They're always able to keep their options open. They have other choices. And generalists ultimately triumph. You can even make the same argument in terms of monogamy versus poly or polygyny. With polygyny has two subvariants, which is polyamory and polygamy, which we spoke previously. Generalists end up having more choices. You have the female sexual strategy of hypergamy. That is a generalist strategy because it's pluralistic. It's not just one singular strategy, even though women in general like to find the highest quality man, but men in general like quantity of women, basically. And it's really no different when it comes to like the work environment. It really is no different. So in terms of INTPs, Make sure you read this book, Range by David Epstein, as soon as possible so that you understand that it's your job not to focus on any one thing. It's your job to actually become well-rounded. It's your job to do everything. I've had many ISTPs in my life telling me, oh, Chase, you shouldn't boil the ocean. You should focus. I'm like, no. Nope. Nope. Telling an NTP to focus is an absolute effing waste of time. Don't do it. Actually, you want to master multiple things. You want to boil the ocean. You want to read all of the books, all of the authors about a specific subject. So you can take in all the information and cut away what you don't want and keep the good, leave the bad, and move on. A lot of people can't do that. And as Will Pruitt has explained, compare that to the TE tricksters of the world. TE tricksters look at an entire thing or a system or a way of doing things or a principle or a moral or a value or whatever, and they just casually look with their TI child nitpick and try to find one flaw so that they can just automatically write it off mentally. Or if it looks absolutely perfect to them for their FI critic, then they'll accept it as truth and move on. I mean, this is kind of how TE Trickster works, and it's really frustrating. More about that later in terms of the hypocrisy series that we're doing right now in the premium lectures for members. If you want to find out more about that, csjoseph.life/members. So that could be a problem. That could be a big deal, overall. If you find yourself specialized, then if you lose the one thing that's holding you tethered down in your life due to you being so specialized, there ain't going to be jobs available for you. You can't do that. And if you're an INTP man, as a man, you have to generalize anyway. You got to be good at computers. You got to be good at mechanics. You got to be good at everything. So whatever interest you have, do it with all of your might so that you can gain experience with those particular interests sooner than later. It's very important that you actually commit to doing these things. And if you don't, well, then you're going to be abandoned. No one's going to want you. You're not going to have any desire for you whatsoever, and no one's going to accept you in the long run. Yeah, the tech giants that want to control your life, they'll definitely accept you as a specialist, but then they own you, okay? If you don't want to be accepted as a specialist, then I suggest you go a little bit further and become something more, something that even they can't control because you have options. Think about it. Women aren't attracted to men unless those men have options, okay? So what makes you think a tech giant hiring you or any organization hiring you is going to want to keep you around unless they know that you have options, basically? So David Epstein basically teaches how and why it's so important for you as an INTP to have options. And I think this is why your NI critic just automatically knows that this is not something it wants you to do. It doesn't allow you to want anything because your NI critic is trying to teach you how to become a generalist instead of a specialist, because NE parent can see how irresponsible everybody else is in the world with being specialists. Now, there is a book about specializing, and that's known as Mastery. The thing is that Mastery makes the argument, and this is written by Robert Greene, and I highly recommend you read it. Mastery says you have to focus and spend a lot of time becoming a master of something. Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, though, is that for NI users, they like to lazily get by on life and just have that be just one thing. Well, us SI users have to go beyond that and have actually multiple things that we specialize, so we become the generalist. And in terms of information technology, this is why IT generalists like myself are paid a lot more money, somewhere upwards of $300 an hour in some cases, even more than that in some cases, because they are generalists, because they can do everything and not just one thing, right? So if you want to be valuable as an INTP, if you want to be wanted, if you want to be desired, you have to put in way more effort than an NI user specialist would ever do and focus on becoming a generalist and become a master of literally everything your hand touches. Then you'll be desired. Then you will be accepted. Then you will be valuable. And people actually seek you out for your career. Well, guess what? It's no different in terms of like women if you're a man. It's no different. So based on that, make sure you become a generalist first and foremost. The next thing is like what specific careers. I mean, if you're getting in anything tech, don't be a software developer. Don't be let the INFJs be a software developer. Let them be in DevOps. Let them do that. The real money, the real capability of an IT person is all in infrastructure. Go get certified, A plus certification. That's $32 an hour right there at Amazon. Go get a Linux plus certification so you can understand Linux, which is even more important than understanding Windows or anything Microsoft, let's be honest. And then get the Network Plus certification. After that, focus on everything that you need to know on Microsoft Azure. You need to memorize virtual machines on Microsoft Azure, virtual networks on Microsoft Azure, Azure. AWS is a waste of time, folks. It is a waste of time. It has really terrible services, and I don't recommend it. It may be cheaper than Azure in certain cases, but you're really getting what you pay for in Azure. Trust me, do it that way. From an Azure standpoint, also learn Azure App Service, also functions as a service for function apps, etc. So you can host entire applications, application stacks. Learn LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, or MariaDB, and PHP, which is 70% of the internet out there, and that's the basic. Understand LAMP stack, and then you kind of can go for there. You could practice on DigitalOcean if you don't want to be on Microsoft Azure, etc. Understand what platform as a service, DB as a service, software as a service, functions as a service. You understand what all those things mean and how they fit together. Because it's literally a giant puzzle. Information technology is a giant puzzle. It is literally playing with Legos. And if you could play with Legos and learn engineering as a child, then you'll be a very capable engineer as an adult. Legos is engineering, and I played with Legos constantly as a little kid, and I invented my own structures. I even made a Lego version of the Sun Crusher from Star Wars, specifically from the book Jedi Search with Admiral Daala, for example. Those were in the good old Grand Admiral Thrawn days, etc. A fantastic character created by Timothy Zahn, which, in my opinion, is one of the best Star Wars villains in the history of ever. Even cooler than Darth Vader or Emperor Palpatine, let's be straight. So the point is that go into information technology, learn about the following technologies. You want to be go for infrastructure. Do you know why you want to do infrastructure, not software? Because software depends on the infrastructure. And I know how you INTPs like to be the chair that everyone sits on so that you can pull out the chair out from under anyone at any moment just in case. Which means you're going to want to be at the bottom, which means you're going to want to be at the foundation, which is infrastructure. And to learn infrastructure in IT, you need to know the following. You need to learn basic networking. You need to learn Linux. You need to know Windows Server, for example. For Linux, I recommend Alpine Linux for containers. I also recommend Ubuntu, especially. You can also do CentOS or Debian, but they're all pretty much the same. So you don't have to really, or Fedora, I guess, but that's kind of like a little bit out there for some people. And then learn about the concept known as virtualization. Learn about the concept known as containers and container technology. Understand how to deploy into a container from GitHub, etc., and how to ship containers. Also learn how to understand Kubernetes, right? Technologies like Rancher OS or technologies like Chef, etc. These things are super, super important. Also, learn Ansible. Please, God Almighty, learn Ansible. And if you really want to get into a tech career, honestly, if you're an INTP and you're like studying for software development or engineering, or you're studying infrastructure IT right now, here's my absolute C.S. Joseph recommendation. Immediately drop out of college. That's step one. Step two, pay $60 a month at cbtnuggets.com and learn everything there is to learn about all of those subjects, and then go take their certification tests, get certified, and then go apply for specific companies known as value-added resellers and be their engineer on staff. Because you have a certification, they're going to want to hire you. They don't care about your degree. You having a certification is important because they get better margins with the products that they sell if you're certified. So, for example, if you're certified in Veeam backup and replication, or if you're certified in VMware, for example, most value-added resellers like Dasher Technologies, Quest Technology Management, etc., NWC, NWN, there's a host of others. And there's also distributors like Arrow or Tech Data, uh, Ingram Micro, these companies. And then there's manufacturers like Lenovo, etc., or Dell, NVIDIA. Again, infrastructure engineers and especially generalists are extremely rare. And even if you don't have a college degree, you could be making $120,000 a year without a degree if you just went to CBT Nuggets, took the certification courses, and then went and actually got certified. It's not that hard. Again, these companies have to have people on staff with those certifications, and those certs have to be current in order for them to even sell and to be a reseller, to even conduct business whatsoever. And also, the more certs they have, the higher margins that they get to make from the manufacturer or the distributor. They get higher margin, right? And that's how it works in the IT sales thing. Also, I recommend reading a couple other books like, Technical Sales by John Care, C-A-R-E, John Care. He did Mastering Technical Sales. Get that book and read that entire book. And then also read The Ideal Team Player as well. Those two books, which funnily enough are the two main books in terms of onboarding new engineers into Veeam. For example, I used to work for Veeam, so it's kind of similar, and John Care does these types of things with all sorts of manufacturers and distributors, etc. But as an INTP, focus on these things. Become the generalist. You should never be that person that's like, oh, I want to do this. Because usually you guys don't know what you want. And the reason why you don't know what you want to do is because you're not supposed to know what you want to do, because you're supposed to be a generalist and not a specialist. And that's why you end up making more money than everybody else. But the problem is your SI child gets comfortable in your crap, and then you end up staying put, and you allow people like Google and Amazon and Facebook to take full advantage of you when you really shouldn't allow that to begin with. Did you know that when you work for Google, for example, when you sign the employee agreement, that you're agreeing to give them all of your intellectual property from the time before you're even working for them? You do understand that, right? Like, a lot of people don't know that, but that's a thing. So please be aware of that, folks. If but this is kind of how tech giants work. They all do this, right? It's not just Google. I mean, Facebook has similar things too, and some people have decided not to work for them, or some people are like, I'll only ever work for Google, and I'm perfectly fine with that, so who cares? I'm good. It doesn't matter, right? So it's really up to you how you want to live your life, but let me tell you how to live your life right now. Become a generalist, not a specialist, and I promise you, you'll be a lot closer to happiness. So anyway, if you found this helpful, youthful, educational, enlightening, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like and a comment below. We read all of the comments. Otherwise, I hope this answered the Acolyte members' question for this month. So, awesome. Sounds good. Anyway, folks, with that being said, I'll see you guys tonight.